All right. Well, if there's one person who is worse at coaching soccer than me, it is Ben. So thank you so much for that. It is absolutely an honor to be here tonight because I speak all over the world, and this is my home church. And I know that right now my father is looking down on me. He's not dead, he's just very condescending. And so it's one of those things where, I'm coming here now to talk to you about, leadership and, ways that you can be a stronger leader, but not just in your actual small group, but in your life in general. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story in a moment and why these, sort of keys that I'm sharing with you tonight are important and how I sort of came to stumble upon them. But I also, before we really dive in, just want to give a quick bit of recognition or a shout out. My mom is in the audience tonight. I've been doing this over 10 years, and this is the first time she's ever heard me speak. And the reason that is important is because I spend most of my days, if I'm not somewhere speaking, I'm just sitting at home online, tweeting and blogging and those things. And when I told my mom that what I did is primarily on the computer, she thought I worked for AOL. So this now lets her know that I actually do something different than, tell people that they've got mail and those kind of things. Because if you are wondering, who still uses AOL? She does. And I can't lie because I'm in church and all that. So she legitimately does. She's still got the free CDs, so she's got 180 hours. So one day we'll upgrade her, but for now, we won't. Okay, so the first thing that I want to let you guys know in a very positive message is that everything in your life right now is your own fault. Your life is either awesome or horrible based on your thoughts and your habits, and it's the same thing with your group. So if your group right now, if you're not really enjoying all of it and you're sitting there thinking, I don't like everyone in my group, so you're writing them down to be leaders so they'll get out of the group. Because that, by the way, is the easy way to move them out, is be like, you know what? You'd make a wonderful leader, and we're tired of talking to you. It is your fault. And one of the days that it will be the most impactful for you is when you wake up and look in the mirror and say, it's all my fault. When you realize that you have to take personal accountability for your own life. And I had a situation in my life that happened young when I realized this. So I had a great childhood, very Wonder Years kind of childhood, except it was the 80s and 90s, so we actually had video games and cool stuff. But it was basically like the Wonder Years, and then I got hit with a very, very serious case of depression and completely hated myself. Grades fell off, friends fell off, struggled with suicidal thoughts, and it was just really, really bad. So as a teenager and being a Christian and thinking, well, what do I do now? I know that I shouldn't feel this way. I know that I shouldn't, hate myself and have these thoughts, but I don't really know what to do. So I started searching for answers because, it's one thing to pray, but I think God sometimes wants us to actually do something and not just sit back and wait for him to fix it. He wants to see, the effort. So as a 15-year-old, I started reading a bunch of books, which you can imagine how popular that made me with the ladies. I ended up having to marry the one girl who would go out with me. Very true story. We are still together to this day. We just celebrated our 12-year anniversary. So I read these books, and I'm reading books. For Christmas, I'm asking for Tony Robbins' Personal Power cassette tapes and things like that, not normal stuff, right? My friends are getting CDs and guitars and things like that, and I'm getting self-improvement books and things like that. But what I realized is that I needed to be a leader in my own life before I could not just say love myself and overcome the depression, but before I could ever help anyone else around me. So that became a really interesting thing as I sort of went through this and realized that, wow, I need to take personal responsibility for this. I need to be accountable for not just my own self, but then for my family, my community, my church, and things like that. And what I realized then in doing a career like this, where you are working with people from all over the world and all different levels, people who are making millions of dollars a day to people who aren't even making $20,000 a year, I realized that the great leaders all have the exact same things in common. And it's these things that they focus on. So my question to you is, what kind of leader are you going to be? Why are we talking about leadership? Why do we come to these kind of rallies and those things? By the way, I think it's really cool that we call this rally because I never went to pep rallies in high school. So this kind of is like me reliving a weird dream that I missed out on in my own childhood. Although I did expect it to be a little more awesome than this, but that's okay. So, why leadership? Why are these things so important? Well, they're important because what happens is we just go through the motions, right? We wake up in the morning and we do the same routine, getting ready. The real men of us, we just comb the beard and go. Those of you who are not real men, you try to make sure you don't get shaving cream on your blouse, and you get ready, you get in the car, you go to work, you sit there, you do your job, you clock in, you clock out, you come home. We're just always going through the motions, and we do the same thing in small group, right? Where it's like we show up for our weekly meeting, we say hi to everyone, we get the food out, we look at the food, we judge it, we ask who cooked it, because that really depends on how much we're going to put on our plate. And then we, sit down, we talk for a little bit, we all do the same, how was your day, how was your week, that kind of stuff. And then we sit down, we watch an Andy Stanley video, we talk for a little bit, we do our prayer request, we go home, and we don't think about small group again for like the rest of the week, right? That's usually what happens is we fall into these, these patterns, and we get stuck in these ruts. And some of you may even be thinking, what, that's my life. I'm not even just stuck in a rut in terms of, the small group I'm leading. I'm stuck in a rut in terms of my entire life, and I'm just going through the motions. That is what I had found myself to be in, and that's where I decided I needed to actually start living more purposefully, and by leading my life, I could then start to lead someone else. I'm a big believer that, we're all broken, and we've all got mistakes and all that, but until we get our own act together, we can't really lead anyone, right? Because if they are more broken than us, there's not a lot of ways we can help them, right? I had that when I was depressed. I can remember, friends coming up to me and saying, hey, my parents are getting divorced. And I was like, yeah, well, so what? I want to kill myself. So, I win, right? Like, it was just that kind of thing where it's like, how could I even help them? Because it was this whole, like, my wife and I, like, we don't ever really argue unless we both have a headache at the same time. And then it's this debate on whose headache is worse. So it's like, I'll be like, she'll be like, my head hurts. I'll be like, oh, I had a headache all night. And she'll be like, well, I've had the kids all day and I have a headache. And I'm like, well, I had to work and have a headache and I didn't eat lunch. Like, we keep trying to, one-up each other on, whose headache is worse, kind of a thing. And that's what we fall into sometimes with our own problems. So it's very important that we pour, improvement and energy into ourselves so that we can be the best we can be in terms of going to lead people. So I'm going to cover 8 things, and the first is going to be your vision. Now, your vision is very important, and let me make it really clear that I do not mean goals, and I don't mean, dreams and things like that. I mean specifically deciding, what is my group going to look like? How am I going to lead? What kind of leader am I? What's my leadership style going to be? We sit there and we think, well, I'll make my group look like whatever Long Hollow says. Wrong. Or I'll make my group look like whatever, Ben says. Wrong. Take responsibility here. It's your group. You are the leader. And yes, you're following what they teach and you're following their guidelines, but if you don't know how your group is going to look, you're not going to have that great of a group, right? By the way, if you don't even know how your life is going to look, you're not going to have that great of a life. Like, you've got to have a vision of, wait a minute, where am I going and what do I want to achieve? Think about the end of your group, right? Like, when it's going to come, time for everybody to become leaders and it sort of branches off and those kind of things, how does that look? What kind of leaders have you created, from this time, right? Think about that. Are you going to watch, a bunch of videos, or are you going to do more, Q&A? Are you going to, how are you going to lead? What's your style? Are you a more passive leader and you're going to wait till, people, just sort of come to you? Or are you going to go out there and directly take charge and go and lead them? So again, it's not, just, goals and things that you wish for. It's very specific of, this is what my group's going to look like. This is how I'm going to lead. This is how my life is going to look. Without vision, you're never going to accomplish anything. Everyone who's ever accomplished something great has never woke up and said, well, it was a complete accident, right? Walt Disney World. How many of you have been to Walt Disney World? Most of you? Awesome. How many of you hate it when a speaker asks you questions? Awesome. Walt Disney goes to Florida and he sees swampland and he sees Disney World. Right? Could he have accomplished that without that vision? Of course not, because most people didn't have that vision, right? So first you have to have the vision, then you can accomplish things. So that's what I want to challenge you on, is how do you actually, make sure you're doing this, correctly and being purposeful about the group and vision that you're creating. The second one is attitude, and this is actually, of the 8, I would stress or argue that this is the most important one, because if your attitude is bad, then your life is going to be bad. And I know some of you in this room, and you need a kick in the attitude really, really bad. And the thing is like your attitude, it determines so much, right? When you have a problem in your life or within your group, your attitude is going to determine how you handle it. In fact, it's proven that your attitude is the determining factor in whether or not you overcome challenges. So maybe you're in, financial, problems. Your attitude is going to determine whether or not you overcome that or not. Maybe your marriage is in, problems or, challenges. Your attitude really determines those things. You have got to make sure that your attitude is great, because this is such an important factor in every area of your life, especially if you're walking around saying, hey, I'm leading a small group. Well, then you better have a good attitude about things. I'm going to talk for a moment about cats because I hate cats. I'm convinced that for the people who go to hell, like everyone has a pet cat in hell. Like my vision of hell is that it is a super Walmart with a Kroger inside of it, and everyone has a cat. And that's what's going on. And the problem I have with cats is like if you go home and you've got a dog, and by the way, if you've got cats and you're like offended or whatever, don't tweet me, tweet Ben or email him or whatever. Like you got to adjust your attitude anyways if you're a cat lover. But you go home, if you've got a dog, you go home and the dog hasn't seen you all day and the dog comes running up to you, right? He's psyched out of his mind that you're home, right? Tail's wagging, he's jumping, he's just thrilled that you're home. If you have a cat and you come home, you step in the door and you're like, where is it? You're like looking around because you're afraid it's like hiding and going to attack you or whatever, because it's not happy that you're home, right? It's like, oh, they keep coming back. So you have to, the cat thing is a whole different talk. Anyways, one of the things that I realized by not being a cat person and being a dog person is that dogs have a really, really great attitude. And I noticed something. My wife and I have kids now. You may have seen them before the childcare thing happened. They were the ones running up and down the stage. But before we had kids, our kid was a dog. And we loved the dog. The dog was great. And I noticed that the dog was treated very, very well in my house. When the dog wanted to go outside, she took him outside. When the dog wanted to eat, he ate. Like she made him food. And I thought, wow, how do I get her to treat me as good as the dog? And then it hit me of the attitude, right? The dog is always excited to see her, right? The dog is always willing to snuggle on the couch and, all of those kind of things. The dog doesn't mind that she's got the coldest feet of any person on the planet and all that, right? So I realized that if I adjust my attitude, her attitude towards me changes, right? So think about that when you're going to your group. What's your attitude? When they come into the room or when they come into your home or wherever it is you hold it, what's your attitude? How excited are you to see the people in it, right? Because I can tell you right now, if you're not thrilled to see them, they are not thrilled to come back and see you. Do you want me to pose? Because I was in the middle of moving, I can do a really cool action shot, So your attitude is going to determine the whole group thing and whether or not the energy and the atmosphere and all of that is right, and whether or not it's creating the right thing. With your attitude, by the way, comes enthusiasm. Right? And this is one of those things that really frustrates me, not just as someone who's in a small group, someone who goes to Long Hollow or a Christian or whatever, but just as a human being, why we don't have more enthusiasm about stuff. Listen, if you're not fired up about your group, no one else will be either. And I have sat here many a Sunday morning and heard conversations where somebody's like, hey, how are you? And they're like, I'm good. David's really funny, right? Yeah, he sure is. And how about the Vols? Yeah, it's great. And then they'll be like, what else do you do? I lead a small group. Oh, really? How's that? It's cool. Well, that doesn't sound like something I want to sign up for, right? Like if you're not jazzed out of your mind about it, why should I even care to listen to you about it, right? And by the way, with that, keep in mind, even if your group is full, you are still a huge component to groups here, right? So you can determine whether or not people just get in groups, whatever. Your group may be full, but that doesn't mean you can't pass them along to someone else. Or if you meet someone in the hall, like at Group Link or those kind of things, and they're like, hey, I'm interested in groups, and they kind of look funky, and you think, I don't want to be with them, tell them your group is full, and then send them to someone else's group. But you have to have enthusiasm about it. And that then becomes, again, it's very contagious. The third thing is confidence. And this one, obviously, from sharing my story before, is very, very important because you need confidence to succeed in life. Regardless of what you do, you need the right self-esteem. And I don't mean cockiness or being arrogant or those things, but just a good, healthy, self-belief. In fact, all improvement comes from self-improvement. If you want your income to improve yourself. If you want your marriage to improve yourself. If you want your group to get better, you need to get better. It all starts with you. Every single area of your life. So understand that you may be sitting here right now thinking, well, I've never really struggled with confidence. Great, good for you. Still work on it. Or you may be sitting here right now thinking, wow, I'm full of self-doubt, which, by the way, is all of us. You have to work on it. You have to fight it every day. We sometimes, especially as Christians, we want to sit back and say, it's us against the world. No, it's not. It's not us against the world. It's me against me. My only enemy is myself. There's nothing any one of you can do in here that's going to affect how I lead. Okay? There's nothing that, Ben can say that's going to make any one of you different. You've got to do it. Right? Everything that I'm saying here today, some of you are going to take notes and you're going to nod along and you're going to be like, golly, that guy was amazing and he was so good looking, but you're not going to go and do any of it. Right? A few of you will say, okay, I need to go home and work on myself. And it starts with the confidence. I need to get better at that. I need to be more confident. By doing, what I do, I end up, helping brands and, marketing and all this kind of stuff. And one of the things that I've learned is that the word selfishness got a bad brand at some point. Because when the word originated, the original meaning is basically described as, when you're on the airplane and they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first so that you can help other people. That's what they mean by selfishness. We've somehow turned it into a bad thing where we think, well, we don't want to be selfish. What I am saying is you need to be more selfish. One, it's awesome. And two, it's because as you get better, your group gets better. The people in your group get better. You can have those kind of conversations, that you need. I think a lot about, your name was not Brad, but it's in your last name. Your name is Tom? Zach. So close. Thank you, Tom. So one of the things, when they were up here talking is that, notice how they weren't the most confident people when their group started, but they are today. Right? Because they had the right attitude about handling challenges and problems and things like that. So it was amazing. So now what happens is their confidence is growing a little bit, all along. Be purposeful about that. Spend time working on yourself. It's a very, very important thing to do. And then the fourth is environment. And we've all heard, or at least most of you have probably heard the whole thing. I don't know who originated it, but your income is like the average income of the 5 closest people to you or whatever. I remember the first time I heard that, my 5 closest friends were flipping burgers at a fast food restaurant. And I was like, crap, I really need new friends because these people are, killing me financially. So you have to, watch out for your environment. Success and stupidity are both contagious. So choose the people in your life very, very wisely. Bob mentioned on that video, some people need, a big microphone in your life, and some need the microphone, completely taken away. Well, I want to encourage you to think about this and think about the kind of people that you're associated with. One of the great things about doing this is that you're coming together with the other leaders and you're realizing that you're not the only crazy person trying to lead a group, right? There's other people who are going through this exact same thing, trying to do it. And I respect you tremendously because I can absolutely tell you there was not a bigger skeptic of groups than myself. I did not even join a small group. I was drugged into my small group. I was the guy who was like, I do not have time. I do not, all my prayer requests are going to be unspoken. I don't want to pray out loud. Just all that, I don't, actually in my small group, and a lot of my small group people are here, someone was like, you're a lot like Timothy from the Bible. I'm like, oh, yes, I am. And then I'm going home and I'm Googling, who's Timothy? I have no idea if that was an insult or not, and I'm still confused by it. So it's one of those things where I really respect what you do because it's not easy to get those people in and realize, oh, we can kind of have church not being at church and not on Sundays and that kind of weirdness. It's a great thing. It has absolutely impacted my life so extreme that it's changed my life for the better. Friends of mine who are not in small group, who don't go to Long Hollow, have seen a difference in me. And they're like, what is that difference? And I'm like, believe it or not, it's small group. And they don't know at first, what I'm talking about, and then I have to explain what it is. And it's just been this great thing. And so, think about that environment. Are you creating an open group? Tom, Brad, Zach mentioned earlier about, what did you mention? I was listening. People sharing their story, like being open, that kind of stuff. That was the whole, I've got it written right here, and I still didn't know. Because I keep thinking your name is Tom. Is your middle name Tom? Close. Okay, so are you creating an open group, right? A group where people can share and go deep, right? Because that's a big thing. And a lot of groups, by the way, I don't think are there yet. And maybe it's your group, maybe it's not, but I know a lot of people who are in groups here at this church, and they're not as open as other groups that I know of. And they're struggling with stuff, and they're thinking, yeah, that's not exactly a safe place for me to share that. Or, well, I wouldn't share that with my group. My group, we share everything. Like, we know every dark and dirty secret. Like, I'm getting flustered because I'm thinking of some of the secrets. What was that? That was amazing. Now we're all off track. I know their secrets. That's what I'm saying. And for the right amount of money, I will share every one of those secrets when this is over. We're an open group, and there's people in our group who are not like me, who is new to the whole small group thing, and they're like, hey, this is like the third or fourth group I've been in, and I would have never shared what I shared tonight with my previous groups. That's a bad thing. Right? Because how are we going to grow if we can't be open? So what kind of environment are you creating, and who's in your environment? Your group, by the way, should be growing. If your group looks the same today as it did 3 months ago, you're not doing a good job. Right? And I can tell by the stares, you're like, oh, crap. You have to be growing, okay? You have to be doing that. And one of the ways, by the way, that you can help do this is our next principle, which is to seek out information. I mentioned earlier about being reading and things as a teenager, which was amazing, by the way, because I would not do it in school at all. In fact, here's the interesting thing about school is that I spent years in speech therapy and also failed high school English, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and now I make my living speaking and writing. So to my high school English teacher, take that. But you've got to seek out this information. School info was not good, and that's why I do this for a living. My mom, I'm sure, is thrilled of all those years I didn't go to college, are being put to good use. But you have to go out and read. You all just got a free book. Some of you will read it, and some of you, it's going to go, on the dashboard of your car until like the end of summer when it's faded and kind of stuck there and nasty. If that's you and you're like, oh yeah, I can do that, clean your car, stop that. Whole different thing. But read and read regularly, okay? David almost every Sunday mentions a book he's read. I have sat there, and don't tell him this, but I've sat there in service, pulled out my phone, pulled up the Amazon app, and bought the book that he just mentioned then, so that it's there, on Monday, for me to read. Let me just say this real quick, and I don't mean to be mean, but I'm about to be mean to every one of you. If you're sitting here right now and you're like, yeah, that sounds great, who's got time to read? You do, okay? If you know, for the guys especially, girls, this is awesome if you know this, but guys, if you know every single team that was in the NFL playoffs last year, then you have time to read, okay? If you can remember how many touchdowns Peyton Manning threw last season, then you have time to read. Okay, so don't sit there and think, well, I don't have time for this. I need help with time management. No, you need priority management. There's no such thing as a time management problem. It's only a problem with our priorities. So you need to make sure that you're reading regularly. Another thing is asking questions, right? These guys, the whole team in the back, you should be asking them questions all the time because all these guys do is study leadership and how to do this stuff and how to make groups better. You should be asking them questions. You should also be networking with all your other fellow leaders to figure out what's working for them or maybe what's not working. Maybe you can help them out. But again, we talked about being around the right environment, right? Everybody's got different leadership styles. You should right now be sitting there thinking in this room, who can I set up an appointment with to go have coffee and talk to them about how they're leading and growing their group? Because maybe they're doing something in their group that's really interesting that would work in yours or gives you an idea. Always be seeking out that knowledge because if you're not, then you're not growing and you're really, falling behind. The next one is bravery. And this one is also really important because obviously if you're going to be a leader, and you all already are, you're putting yourself out there, and that's a risky thing. And I know that that's not easy, especially just in your life, not just leading a group. But when you are out there trying to be brave and trying to be bold, you're going to come across people who, the cool kids call haters, but we can call them critics, we can call them, just a pain in the butt, whatever you want to call them. You're going to deal with it, right? You're going to have those people who are going to start coming to your group and they don't like whose house it's at, or they don't like who cooked the food, or whatever. Right? They're going to find every reason to not like it, or not like you and not like your leadership style. They're going to be like, well, I don't really like the way they talk about this, or I don't really like the way they dress or the way they look. People will hate you for that. Here's a little secret about good-looking people. We're not that well liked. People will hate you for anything, right? Any possible reason. And so you have to be brave. And with that, that means you have to fear regret more than you fear failure, okay? Because guess what? You're gonna fail. Some of you are probably sitting here thinking, that's good because I've already failed a lot. I certainly know that I have, and you are going to, okay? And that's why you have to be brave, because you are absolutely going to fail along the way, right? But that's okay, because no one is paying attention to those failures but you. Okay? If we remembered people for their failures, Christopher Columbus would be known as the guy who didn't find India, right? We only care about what works and what good people are doing. The failures and things like that, if you sit there and say, hey, this week in small group, we're going to try X, and it doesn't work, that's still a success because now you know. And you were brave enough to try. Or maybe you've got to go out there and talk to people that's uncomfortable because you didn't want to talk to them before and you were afraid to invite them to small group, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe someone in small group isn't growing or whatever, and you got to kind of push them a little bit. Be brave to do that, because God favors the brave. He puts you in this position for a reason. Okay? And the reason he put you there is because he knows what you're capable of. So you've got to make sure that you don't sit back and let your own fear stop his plans, right? Or let your own fear stop someone in the group from hearing exactly what they need to hear. I used to get really nervous to come on stage and do this kind of stuff. And one day it just sort of hit me how I could never be afraid to do this again. And what the discovery sort of that hit me while sitting in the Chicago airport, eating horrible, horrible food and wishing that I was home, what hit me was that if I'm nervous, all of my focus is on myself and how I do and making sure I don't fall off the stage and that kind of stuff. But that's the wrong thing. If I focus instead on every one of you, why am I nervous? Because now it's not about me, it's about you. And so every time before I go on stage, I say this prayer of help me just help one person. It'd be great if I could help everyone, because that would be less awkward. But even if it's just one person, let's go for that, right? Same thing with you. As you're going out and taking action, you're being brave on this stuff, remember, it's the group that matters, right? It's the people listening to you, the people looking to you for leadership, okay? So you owe it to them to not let fear stop you, right? How dare you let your own self-doubt stop you from saying the one thing that someone needs to hear, that may save their life, that may save their marriage, right? That may keep them in church, or whatever, or may put them in a position to go out and witness and lead to someone else. Right? We can't let ourselves get in our own way on that kind of stuff. And then the seventh thing is initiative. And this one is really simple, but you've got to take action. Right? You've got to go. Successful people are in a habit of taking action before they are ready. I know some of you right now are thinking, well, I'm going to make my group, and we're going to do, when I thought about my vision, we're going to do, such and such, right? And you're thinking, this is going to be great, but I'm going to wait until we're ready, until everything is ready. Well, get comfortable, because you're going to be there for a while, because it never is ready. Right? If you're waiting for the perfect time to tell someone that they can be a leader of your group, it's never going to happen. If you're waiting for the perfect time to, implement something new or to bring up a tough, difficult discussion in your group, it's never going to happen. Take action. If you're waiting for the perfect time to go up to someone and say, you know what, I think you should be in a group, I think you should do this, it's never going to be the perfect time. You have got to go out there and take action. And by the way, you need to go to them, okay? Gone are the days where we can just sit here and say, oh, we're in the building, they'll come in on Sunday, Ben will put them in, let's do that. No. If you know someone who would be good in your group or someone else's group, go to them. Call them up and say, hey, let's go to Starbucks. I want to talk to you, right? They will do that. It's a shame that salespeople do a better job at spreading a message than we do as Christians. Okay? Because salespeople, they'll go out and do whatever it takes, right? You've got a pulse and a heartbeat and all that, like, yeah, man, I'll go take you to coffee. Let me tell you what I want you to buy. But then we sit back and say, well, I don't want to be that person to kind of ask them to join my group because that's weird and all that. Well, if you say it like that and you're doing your hands weird, then it is weird, right? Don't be creepy about it. That's a given, okay? But you have to go to them and do this stuff. You can't just sit back and wait. You have to take initiative on things. Again, it goes back to, this personal responsibility, right? And realizing, oh, you know what? I need to do this. I need to take charge of my group. I need to take charge of my family. I need to take charge of my community and actually be purposeful about all this stuff. And then the last one is habits. And this is actually, I mentioned earlier, the attitude was probably one of the more important ones. I would say it's probably second to habits because your habits right now are creating your reality. Your life right now, and I won't ask you to raise your hands because it's really awkward to do this, but some of you right now are thinking, my life is awesome. It's exactly where I want it to be. And some of you right now are thinking, my life is so far from where I want it to be right now, I wouldn't even know, if it improved 10%, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. The reality is, every single one of you right now are thrilled with where your life is. Because if you weren't, you would change your standards and you would change your habits. And I know that that's a tough pill to swallow, but it's absolutely true. Your group right now is as good as you want it to be. Right? Your relationship with God, church, marriage, kids, whatever, it is all exactly what is acceptable to you. Because if it wasn't acceptable to you, you would change it in a heartbeat, right? If someone broke in your house tonight and said, I'm going to rob you, you would do something because that's not acceptable to you. Right? But everything else is okay, right? Letting people come in and out of groups and not following up with them. When Mike was talking earlier about the names and stuff down here, and he was talking, that maybe there's someone, and it's been 30 days since you've heard from them. If you've got someone right now and it's been 30 days, shame on you. What have you been doing for the last 30 days, right? We live in 2014. We can send them a text message or a tweet or Facebook or what, carrier pigeon, whatever, like get in touch with them. It shouldn't take 30 days to reach out to someone and make sure they're still alive. And by the way, if it does take you 30 days, you know what you're saying to them? You're not that important because it's taken me this long to get back to you. Sorry, I've been busy. Things have been hectic. Everyone's life is hectic. Everyone's life is busy. That is all just an excuse. So your current thoughts and your current habits are creating your reality. So I would ask you to question, are your current thoughts and habits creating the kind of group you want? Are they creating the kind of life that you want? If you keep going exactly how you are today, are you going to be thrilled with where you're at 12 months from now? Right? Probably not, right? You would need to sit down. I like to sit down with a pen and notepaper because I'm old school like that, and just draw a line down the middle. And on the left-hand side, I write down my vision that we talked about earlier. For my life, people I'm leading, whatever you want to do, just everything on your vision goes on the left-hand column. On the right-hand are all my current daily habits. And then I sit there and look to see how do these align. Usually, they don't quite align as much as I would like, and I now know where I can make adjustments and things like that. But you need to make sure that you've got that, right? That vision stuff is aligning. And then work hard on doing that kind of stuff. All of this, by the way, takes hard work, right? It takes commitment. Hunter Clark, by the way, are you writing that down? I don't know where you've been in your life that you just now heard that hard work is a good piece of advice. Right? You don't have to write hard work down. That's not one of the 8. That's a given, okay? Hard work is a given thing. You have got to work hard in everything. We have to work hard, as a parent, really hard if you have my kids. You have to work hard in your marriage. You have to work hard at your job. You have to work hard in your faith. You have to work hard leading a group, and all these kind of things. And again, it comes back to the reason the habits are so important is because this is your personal responsibility, and you are the group leaders. And I know that you're sitting there saying, well, I'm just as broken as the people in my group, and I need to grow too, and I need that help too. Yes, you do, but stop whining. because you are held to a different standard because you are the leader of the group. And you're going to grow just by helping them grow. And I used to not believe that. I used to just think that was cheesy, right? Zig Ziglar used to say, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get everything that you want. And I thought, how do I find these people doing that? Like, that's amazing. If I can just surround myself with people helping me, then I'll be happy. But I learned that it's actually true. The more you give, the more you receive, right? So your job is to take that personal responsibility and be purposeful about these things. And so in closing, I want to let you know that as you have seen, when you step up to lead, the following appears, right? People in the world are begging to be led. We are all looking for someone to grab us by the hand and tell us what to do. It's how we all want it. And that's why I congratulate you all for being leaders to step up and say, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to be that person, right? Because that does take faith and it does take bravery, and that's what you have to do. The thing about all of this comes down to, you may not have woke up and said, I'm going to be a leader one day, right? You may not even now think, I'm actually a leader. You may not consider yourself a leader. You may just think of, I'm the person who tells us what house we're going to in small group, or assigns food, or those kind of things. But you are. You're a leader in your household. You are a leader in church. You are a leader in your community. That's why you have to protect these 8 things that I talked about, making sure that your environment's good. Because, by the way, you're not just leading these people when you're actually sitting there in front of them. You're leading them 24/7. They're watching you online, which I know sounds creepy, but they are. And they're watching how you interact with your kids. They're watching how you interact with strangers. They are paying attention to everything that you do. And the reason that that's not a bad thing and that it's a good thing is because all they want is a little bit of hope and some love, right? And they're wanting you to take them by the hand and say, hey, it's going to be okay. I don't necessarily know how, but we're here for you, and those things. And that's what's important, and that's the way that you need to lead. So regardless of what kind of leadership style you have or what kind of personality you have, you can still help people in that way. So it is my sincere hope that we all get